The car screeched to a halt, tires skidding over the gravel as the officer stared, stunned. A golden retriever, its fur matted with dirt and blood, stood motionless in the middle of the road, its amber eyes locked with hers, pleading for something deeper than attention, something urgent. For a moment, it seemed almost human. The officer, Sarah Mitchell, gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles. "What in the world?" she murmured, her partner James Carter beside her, equally startled. The dog didn't run. It moved with purpose toward them, eyes never leaving theirs. Then, with a slight glance over its shoulder, it took a few steps back, as though urging them to follow. The words that escaped Sarah's lips were barely a whisper. "It wants us to follow. Welcome to HeartForce, where you and I find more meaning in life through stories about dogs." Before we continue, please comment below and let us know where you're listening to this video from. And if you have any stories about your dog, feel free to share them with everyone. As Sarah and James followed the dog into the woods, they couldn't help but feel the shift in the air. There was something about this dog, something extraordinary. It wasn't just a stray. This was someone's beloved pet, and it was desperate for help. The dog, whom Sarah silently named Gold for her sun-kissed fur, led them through the thick woods with an unwavering determination. Each movement was deliberate, calculated. She stopped only when they slowed, waiting for them to catch up. And every time they hesitated or veered off path, Gold would return to guide them back. Sarah's hand tightened around the handle of her service weapon as she noticed something strange. A scrap of blue fabric caught on a branch, fluttering in the breeze. It matched the tattered collar Gold wore. "Look at how the vegetation's been disturbed," James muttered, kneeling to examine the area. Gold's behavior became even more focused. She pressed forward, her movements precise, like a trained detective, until she led them to an old storage shed, hidden away in the thickest part of the forest. Her posture shifted immediately. She became tense, her body lowering, her ears flicking back. She whined softly, and Sarah could feel the hairs on the back of her neck rise. They were getting closer. The dog was leading them to something crucial. But what? Gold's behavior told them that something dangerous lurked nearby. And just as they were about to approach the shed, Sarah spotted a weathered missing poster half hidden beneath a vine on a nearby tree. Her breath caught in her throat as she peeled it away. There in the photo was Gold, a bright blue collar around her neck, her fur gleaming, her face filled with joy. "Missing, Luna," Sarah read aloud. The poster detailed the Anderson family's search for their beloved pet, a therapy dog named Luna, who had vanished 6 months ago. A reward was offered for her safe return. Gold's eyes never left the poster, and a soft whine escaped her throat. Despite her current condition, her coat matted and stained, her body bearing the scars of neglect, there was no mistaking it. This was Luna, the family's cherished pet. Suddenly, Sarah felt a sharp pang of sympathy. This dog had been through so much, taken from her family, left in the woods to survive alone, and yet she had the strength to find help. "We need to figure out what happened to you, girl," Sarah whispered, her voice filled with determination. Gold stood at attention, ears pricked. Her posture was unwavering. Her eyes locked onto Sarah as if confirming the promise. The search had just begun, but for Sarah and James, they knew they were about to uncover something far darker than they could ever have imagined. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the small town of Riverwood as Sarah and James made their way back to the station, Gold walking beside them with an almost regal grace. The road had been quiet since they left the forest, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they had uncovered only the surface of something much larger. James glanced at her, his brow furrowed. "What do you think is really going on, Sarah? Missing pets don't just disappear like that, especially not all purebreds with microchips." She nodded, turning her thoughts over. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fall into place, but there were too many unanswered questions. Why had so many pets gone missing in Riverwood's rural neighborhoods? What could be the link between Gold's appearance in the woods and these disappearances? At the station, Sarah walked straight into the briefing room, the smell of stale coffee hanging in the air. Chief Mike Anderson, a tall man with weathered features, stood over a desk, shuffling through reports. His sharp eyes flicked up as Sarah and James walked in, Gold at their heels. "Mitchell, Carter," Chief Anderson began, his voice low. "We've had reports this month of 3 missing pets, all from the Mountain View area. Something doesn't sit right with me. I've looked into it, and each of these pets is a purebred with proper documentation and microchips. Yet there's no trace of them. No bloodied. It's like they just vanish. Sounds like something's afoot," James remarked, leaning forward. "Any common link?" Anderson paused, running a hand through his graying hair. All 3 owners reported seeing suspicious vehicles in the area before their pets disappeared. "The timing's too close for comfort. I think it's time we look deeper into this." Sarah's mind raced back to the golden retriever that had appeared so unexpectedly in front of their patrol car. The desperate look in its eyes haunted her. Was there a connection? She glanced at Gold, who sat calmly beside her, watching the conversation unfold. It was as if she understood everything. "I'll head out to the Mountain View area," Sarah suggested, her voice firm with resolve. "Maybe talk to the neighbors. See if anyone's noticed anything unusual." Chief Anderson nodded. "I'll send some backup, but be careful. If this is something more than just a few missing pets, it could be bigger than we expect." The drive to Mountain View was quiet, save for the sound of the tires crunching on the gravel roads. Sarah could feel the weight of her service weapon pressing against her side. A constant reminder of the fine line she walked between order and chaos in a small town like Riverwood. As they passed through the neighborhood, Sarah noticed something strange. The houses, which should have been bustling with activity, were eerily quiet. No children playing in yards, no cars parked in driveways. It was as if the whole area had been swallowed up by silence. Gold, however, seemed to sense something else. Her ears pricked up as they passed a house on the corner. She sat up straighter in the back seat, her eyes focused on the small, white building. "What is it, girl?" Sarah murmured, glancing at Gold in the rearview mirror. Gold's eyes never wavered from the house. James raised an eyebrow. "You think she's trying to tell us something?" Before Sarah could answer, Gold whined softly and pawed at the window, her gaze still fixed on the house. The urgency in her behavior was unmistakable. She wanted them to stop. "I think she's trying to guide us," Sarah said quietly, pulling the car over to the side of the road. "Let's see what she knows." They got out of the car, and Gold led them toward the small house. As they approached, they noticed a faded missing pet flyer stuck to the front door. The name on the flyer caught Sarah's attention: Luna Anderson. The same name as the dog in the woods. The same name as Gold. Gold's posture shifted again. She began pacing, her tail wagging nervously. Sarah knelt down, her heart heavy with the weight of the discovery. She had suspected that there was more to this than just a lost dog. This was something much darker. "This is the Anderson house," James said, his voice grim. "The Andersons? They lost Luna 6 months ago." Sarah's stomach turned as she realized what they were up against. They weren't just dealing with an abandoned dog. They were looking at a missing persons case, too. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and a woman appeared on the porch. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying for days. She stepped forward cautiously, her gaze lingering on Gold. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I'm Officer Mitchell," Sarah said, showing her badge. "This is Officer Carter. We're investigating the disappearance of your dog, Luna. We think we may have found her." The woman's eyes widened, disbelief crossing her face. "Luna? Is she alive?" Her voice cracked as she took a step forward. Sarah nodded, her heart aching at the woman's raw emotion. "Yes, we believe she's alive, but she's been through a lot. We need your help to figure out what happened." The woman's hand flew to her mouth as a sob escaped her. "She's not just a dog. She's my daughter's therapy dog. She helped Sophie after her father died. Luna was the one who kept her going. I thought I'd lost her forever." Gold trotted forward, her tail wagging slightly as she approached the woman. The woman bent down slowly, her hand shaking as she reached out to touch the golden retriever's fur. Gold nuzzled into her hand, as if recognizing the familiar touch. "I'm Emily Anderson," the woman said, wiping tears from her eyes. And I don't know what to say. I never thought I'd see her again. As Emily and Sarah spoke, James noticed something strange. The house was quiet. Too quiet. No sound of children playing. No sign of life. The silence in the neighborhood was starting to feel more sinister. I think we need to look around, Sarah said softly, her gaze shifting back to Gold. Gold's been leading us to something. Maybe it's not just Luna who's missing. The room felt heavy with tension as Sarah and James sat in the Andersons' living room, surrounded by a sea of old family photos, mementos, and the faint scent of loss. Emily Anderson had invited them in, her hands trembling as she clutched a cup of tea, trying to steady herself. Gold sat at her feet, her golden fur gleaming in the dim light, as if she too were trying to offer comfort. Sarah couldn't shake the weight of the missing dog posters they'd found around the neighborhood. Something was wrong. The town of Riverwood, once quiet and peaceful, was now shadowed by a growing suspicion. The sudden disappearance of 3 pets, all from the same area, was too much of a coincidence. I've been looking through old files from the missing pets, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the unease bubbling beneath her skin. There's something here. I think we may be dealing with an operation, not just random disappearances. Emily's eyes widened. An operation? What kind of operation? James leaned forward, his brow furrowed. The pets that have gone missing, including Luna, weren't just pets. They were purebreds, well-trained, with microchips. No bodies, no traces, just gone. And the fact that every owner reported suspicious vehicles nearby before their pets vanished. It's a pattern. We're dealing with something far bigger than just lost dogs. The words hung in the air, and Emily's face paled. She clutched her chest as if she had just been struck. So, someone took Luna? For what? To sell her. The pain in her voice was raw, and Sarah could see the walls of hope crumbling around her. We don't know yet, Sarah said, trying to offer some semblance of reassurance. But we'll find out. We're going to figure out what happened to your dog. Gold, who had been sitting silently by Emily's side, suddenly got to her feet. She gave a soft whine, then padded over to the door, her gaze fixed on something outside. She stopped, turned her head slightly toward Sarah, then back toward the door. What's wrong, girl? Sarah asked softly. She stood, following Gold's gaze to the darkening street outside. James, sensing the shift, rose as well. You think she's picking up something? Before Sarah could respond, the faint sound of an engine reached her ears. It was a slow, methodical sound, too deliberate to be just any vehicle passing by. Gold's body tensed, and she paced back toward the window, her eyes never leaving the street. Sarah moved toward the window, pulling back the curtains just enough to see the vehicle pulling up to the Andersons' house. It was a dark van, unmarked, with tinted windows. A chill ran through Sarah as the van stopped across the street. The engine shut off, and the driver's door creaked open. Sarah's hand instinctively went to her holster. This isn't good, she muttered. We need to move now. Emily stood up in alarm. What is it? What's happening? Stay inside, Emily, Sarah said, her voice firm. James, call for backup. We need eyes on that van. Gold was already moving toward the door again, her tail tucked slightly between her legs. There was a quiet urgency in her movements. She knew something was wrong. James grabbed his phone and dialed. I'm on it, he said, glancing nervously out the window. We'll need to move quickly if we want to catch them before they disappear. But it was already too late. As the van's engine cut off, the back door swung open. 2 men emerged, their movements casual but deliberate. One of them glanced up toward the Anderson house and froze for a split second when he saw Gold at the window. His eyes narrowed. The other man followed his gaze, and Sarah saw the recognition flash across his face. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. They knew Gold. They knew Luna. Get back, Sarah ordered, moving quickly toward the door. She reached for her radio. This is Officer Mitchell. We have 2 suspects outside the Anderson residence. Proceed with caution. I need backup now. She turned to Emily, who was frozen in place, staring out the window with a look of dawning horror. Emily, get away from the door. Stay hidden. But it was too late. One of the men turned sharply, spotting Sarah through the window. His face twisted in a sneer. He muttered something to his companion, and before Sarah could react, the men turned and disappeared into the van, slamming the doors shut and peeling out of the driveway. "Damn it," Sarah muttered, rushing toward the front door. "James, get to the car. We need to follow them." But Gold, as if sensing the shift in the air, was already moving. She was no longer the cautious dog they had met in the woods. She was a protector, alert and ready to spring into action. "Come on, girl," Sarah said softly, following Gold as she led them outside. "Let's get them." The tension in the air thickened as Sarah and James followed the van, which had peeled away from the Andersons' house, its tires kicking up gravel. Gold sat quietly in the back seat, her gaze fixed on the road ahead, her body tense with anticipation. It was clear that she was more than just a companion now. She was a key part of this investigation, guiding them with an instinct that defied logic. "Where are they going?" James muttered, keeping his eyes trained on the van as it weaved through the streets, taking sudden turns as if trying to lose them. "They know we're onto them," Sarah said, her jaw set. "They're trying to shake us." Gold let out a soft whine from the back seat, her body lowering slightly, a clear sign that she sensed something even more troubling up ahead. Sarah glanced at James, whose expression mirrored her own. This was no ordinary case. This was bigger than missing pets, and it was getting darker by the minute. The van made a sharp turn onto a narrow road that wound through the outskirts of town. The area was more isolated, far from the town's main streets. Sarah felt her instincts kicking in, a rush of adrenaline as they followed the van deeper into unfamiliar territory. "Stay on them," Sarah said, her voice tight. "Don't lose them." Gold shifted in the back seat, her body trembling with energy. She was ready. Sarah could feel the dog's energy pulsing through the car. It was as if Gold knew the importance of what was happening right now, knew that the answers they were seeking lay just around the corner. After several minutes of tense silence, the van came to a halt in front of an old, abandoned warehouse tucked away behind a rusted fence. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. There was something about this place that didn't sit right with her. The dilapidated buildings seemed to have been forgotten by time, the windows boarded up, and the roof sagging under the weight of years of neglect. "This is it," Sarah said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is where they're hiding." The van's engine shut off, and the men stepped out, looking around cautiously before heading inside the warehouse. Sarah and James exchanged a quick glance before making their move. "Stay here with the car," Sarah instructed. "I'll check it out with Gold." James gave a sharp nod. "Be careful." Sarah and Gold, the hairs on the back of her neck prickled as the world around her seemed to go eerily still. This was the moment they had been waiting for. Gold's movements were slow and deliberate. She navigated the area with practiced ease, her keen senses alert to every sound, every change in the air. Sarah could tell that the dog was more than ready to face whatever they might find inside. They reached the side of the building, and Gold paused, her head tilted as she listened. Then, with a soft growl, she led Sarah around to the back, where a small, rusted door hung ajar. A faint light flickered inside, casting long shadows that danced along the cracked concrete floor. "Stay close, girl," Sarah murmured, her voice barely a whisper as she nudged the door open with the barrel of her gun. Inside, the warehouse was dark and filled with the smell of damp wood and mildew. The faint hum of machinery echoed from somewhere deeper within. Gold, however, didn't hesitate. She moved forward, her paws barely making a sound on the dusty floor, her body low to the ground as she led Sarah through the labyrinth of crates and abandoned equipment. They passed rows of cages, each one containing a dog, some small, some large, all with a similar vacant look in their eyes. They were all still, quiet, as if resigned to their fate. It was a sight that made Sarah's stomach turn, but she didn't let it stop her. She kept following Gold, who seemed to know exactly where she was going. After a few minutes, Gold stopped in front of a large wooden door. The dog's body tensed as she pawed at the ground, her low growl vibrating in Sarah's chest. Sarah placed a hand on Gold's head, her heart pounding. She could feel the dog's urgency, the way her instincts had shifted from guide to protector. This was it. Whatever they were about to find behind that door was the key to everything. "Let's go," Sarah whispered, pushing the door open slowly. The room beyond was dimly lit, with shadows hanging like heavy curtains around the corners. But what caught Sarah's eye was the stack of boxes, each one labeled with a different breed of dog. There were more cages, more dogs, dozens of them, all stacked together in what looked like a makeshift operation. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she took in the sight. "Gold," she whispered. "You were right." The room was filled with the faint sound of whining and scratching, but it wasn't just the animals that caught Sarah's attention. It was the piles of paperwork, documents strewn across tables, filled with names, addresses, and photographs. There were receipts, medical records, shipping invoices, everything Sarah needed to prove that this wasn't just some pet-stealing operation. This was human trafficking, disguised as animal trade. Gold moved to the far corner, her body trembling with a quiet intensity. She pawed at a stack of papers, nudging them towards Sarah. There, at the top of the pile, was a familiar name, Luna Anderson. The document was marked with a stamp from a veterinary clinic. But there was something unsettling about it. The handwriting scrawled across the top read, "Prime candidate for breeding program. Exceptional intelligence." Sarah's heart dropped into her stomach. "They were using them," Sarah murmured, her voice tight. "They were breeding these dogs for their intelligence." Gold's eyes met Sarah's, the unspoken bond between them stronger than ever. This was why Luna, Gold, had been taken. Not for her loyalty, not for her companionship, but because of her intelligence. She was a part of something much bigger, something crueler than Sarah could have ever imagined. As Sarah grabbed the papers, she heard a soft shuffle behind her. She spun around, her gun drawn, just as the door slammed shut. "Stay back," Sarah shouted, but it was too late. The men who had been in the van were standing in the doorway, their eyes cold and calculating. The room felt charged with tension, the air thick with the stench of desperation as the two men stepped forward. Their eyes locked on Sarah and Gold, who stood between them and the only exit. Sarah's hand tightened around her gun, but her mind raced, trying to piece together what was happening. The men's faces were hard, devoid of any remorse, as they sized up the situation. "You're in the wrong place, officer," one of them sneered, his voice low and threatening. "You don't know what you're messing with." Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, but she kept her focus. She knew what she had to do. Gold was no longer just a witness. She was an integral part of this fight. Sarah could feel the dog's presence at her side, solid, unwavering, ready to protect. "I know exactly what I'm messing with," Sarah replied, her voice firm. "And you're not going to get away with it." The men exchanged a quick glance, the realization that they were cornered hitting them like a freight train. One of them moved toward the stack of documents, a frantic desperation in his eyes. But before he could reach them, Gold lunged forward, blocking his path with a low growl. Her eyes burned with an intensity that matched Sarah's resolve. "You'll have to go through her first," Sarah said, her voice hard. "And I don't think that's something you're ready for." The man froze, taken aback by the dog's sudden aggression. The other man stepped forward, pulling a knife from his belt. "We'll see about that," he muttered, brandishing the blade. "You're messing with forces you can't handle." But Gold wasn't intimidated. She was trained, fierce, and loyal. She moved with a speed that Sarah could barely track, her body shifting into a defensive stance. The knife wielder hesitated, his eyes flicking nervously from the blade to Gold's ready posture. "Get back," Sarah warned, her voice steady. She kept her gun aimed at the men, but she knew that Gold was the real protector in this situation. The tension in the room built to a breaking point. The man with the knife lunged, but in a split second, Gold was there, her teeth bared, her body twisting with precision. She dodged the man's strike, using her agility to counterattack. Her growl echoed in the warehouse as she knocked the man to the ground, her jaws snapping shut mere inches from his hand. The man let out a shout of pain and surprise, scrambling backward. The knife clattered to the floor as he reached for his wrist, but Gold wasn't finished. She held her ground, poised and ready to strike again if necessary. Sarah took a step forward. Her eyes locked on the remaining man, who was now backing away toward the far corner of the room. "It's over," she said, her voice cold and final. "You're not going anywhere." He hesitated for a moment, calculating his chances, but the sound of approaching sirens echoed in the distance. Backup was on its way, and there was no way out. His shoulders sagged in defeat. "You think you've won, huh?" he spat, his face twisted with contempt. "You don't even know who you're dealing with. This goes deeper than you can imagine." "Maybe," Sarah said, her gaze narrowing. "But it's ending now." The sound of footsteps grew louder as officers swarmed into the warehouse, surrounding the men. Within moments, they were handcuffed, their arms pulled behind their backs as the officers moved swiftly to secure the scene. Gold, now calm, stood at Sarah's side, her tail gently wagging in satisfaction, as if knowing her job was done. Sarah walked over to Gold, kneeling to give her a quick pat. "You did it, girl. You led us straight to the heart of this operation." Gold looked up at Sarah, her amber eyes filled with quiet understanding. She had guided them, protected them, and ultimately uncovered the truth. This was more than just about finding a lost dog. This was about exposing an entire criminal empire and bringing justice to the victims, the pets, and the families who had suffered in silence for too long. As Sarah stood up, she felt a rush of gratitude wash over her. She had always known that the bond between humans and animals could be powerful, but this was something beyond what she had ever imagined. Gold had saved not only the dogs, but also the entire community. She had fought for what was right, with a loyalty and determination that no one could match. Back at the station, Sarah watched as the suspects were processed, the evidence piling up around them. The paperwork, the shipping records, the hidden files, it was all there, clear as day. The criminal network that had been exploiting these animals for years was finally unraveling, all thanks to Gold's extraordinary courage and sharp instincts. And as the investigation continued, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on the journey they had just taken. The darkness they had uncovered ran deep, but it had also sparked something in the town. People were beginning to speak out, to stand up for the voiceless. The community was healing, and it was Gold who had led the way. Gold's journey wasn't just about finding the truth. It was about teaching us the value of loyalty, courage, and the importance of fighting for what's right. No matter the odds, no matter the challenge, the spirit of resilience lives within us all, often in the most unexpected places. Gold has reminded us that every fight, no matter how small, can make a world of difference. What did you think of the final confrontation? Were you as surprised by Gold's bravery as I was? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and make sure to subscribe to HeartForce for more amazing stories about dogs and the lives they touch.